Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Package Tourist, hosted by yours truly, The Package Tourist, the magical mystery tour called Life, Matthew DiBiase. Tonight's guest is author Brenda Diann Johnson. Brenda lives in Texas and holds college degrees in communications and education. When she isn't working, she is the founder and CEO of the Young Scholars Book Club. She is the chairperson for Sowing Toward Everlasting Prosperity and does volunteer work for those who suffer from HIV/AIDS and other STDs. She has written numerous books that deal with self-help, spiritual and personal growth, children's fiction, and encouraging young scholars. Tonight, we will pay tribute to her writing career. Brenda, welcome to the show. It's a great honor and privilege to have you here. I'd like to start off by asking you, can we talk about your latest book, Adultery Was Never God's Will, The Aftermath on the Family? Please tell our audience, what is it all about?
Yes, we can definitely talk about that. And also I want to thank you for inviting me on your show. It's definitely an honor to be here with you.
Thank you.
Now, as far as my latest book, Adultery Was Never God's Will, The Aftermath on the Family, basically the book goes into detail about the affair and the adultery of David and Bathsheba. You know, that's a famous Bible story that everyone pretty much knows about, or at least have heard of it. But what I wanted to do was really point out just the effects of adultery, because that's not only something that happened in the Bible time, but that's a prevalent subject and topic that happens in everyday life today. So I think when people, when they find themselves in adultery, cheating on their spouse or whatever, they don't really know what the consequences are. They really don't know the long-term or the short-term consequences. They just know that it's something that they want to do because they feel they're grown, they can do what they want to do. But I also wanted to just let people know that even though the story of David and Bathsheba, even though God forgave David, and everybody knows that, David was a man after God's own heart, and he was a king, and, he was favored and all of that. But he still slipped into adultery. It was something that happened. But even though he was forgiven, because that's what most people, they emphasize, the forgiveness in Psalms 51. Even though he was forgiven, he still had to suffer consequences that didn't change. So I want people to know that even though you're forgiven, when you sow a seed, especially a seed of sin, iniquity, you've sown it, and it's still going to harvest, and you're still going to reap the consequences. God will give you grace to go through it, but you still will reap the consequences.
What, in your opinion, what is the root cause of all forms of adultery? Why is marriage today in such jeopardy?
Well, in my opinion, I would say sin. I'm just going to go back to say sin. I know that sounds pretty simple, but that is true. Sin is the cause of any root of adultery or anything that happens when it comes to marriage. Now, I will say this. When I say sin, I want to read the scripture to you so that you can understand where I'm coming from. In the King James Version, it says, "Therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin." So when you know to do the right thing, of course, when you get married, that's what you got married for. You didn't get married to cheat on your spouse, and you didn't get married to get a divorce. You didn't get married to mistreat your wife or your husband. That's not why you got married. You got married to the person because you love that person. You wanted to spend your life with that person. You wanted that to be your life partner. You wanted to be to death do you part. And that's why I go back to sin. When you commit sin against your spouse, whether it's adultery, whether it's mistreatment, abuse, whatever the cause is, it still goes back to sin. And the Bible is very clear. It says Therefore, to him, if you know to do good, you know to do what's right, but you don't do it, it's sin. And that comes from James 4:17.
Okay. How can couples combat temptations and maintain marriages?
Well, first of all, I'm going to give my opinion, but I also want to plug this as well, just so that your listeners can know as well. I want to tell you about a book by Rufus and Glenda Fields. It's called Diary of a Man, Heart of a Woman. And they are a couple that have been married pretty much 40 years. They'll be married for 40 years this year. And they've been through, just the gamut of everything when it comes to marriage. And they are a couple that can mentor, I would say, any young couple, any mature couple, whatever, because they've been through the seasons of marriage. And they have the track record to prove it. And in the book, they cover a lot of things that married people go through, and the challenges and stuff, so that you can weather the storms and stay together. But in my opinion, when it comes to marriage and couples trying to stay together and things that they need to do, I would say the first thing is they need to follow the blueprint that God set in the Bible for marriage. God has specific things in the Bible for husbands to follow and for wives to follow. And if you follow God's blueprint, you should have a godly, a happy marriage. I'm not saying everything is going to always be rosy, but it's going to help you get through those storms. It's going to help you to stay together and not be, weighed down by temptation or get caught up by temptation, because you're following and you're doing things the way God said to do it. I'm going to give you an example here when it comes to, just say the man, for example. The first thing that I would say, too, let me go back. I'm going to step back. The first thing you need to do is, the first principle is found in 2 Corinthians 6:14. It says, "Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion has light with darkness?" That's in 2 Corinthians 6:14. Now, that's the first thing. If you can get that first principle right, and not be, not rush into marriage or, be unequally yoked with somebody that don't have the same faith as you do, they don't believe as you do, they don't even have the same goal. I mean, all of that plays a part into the person that you're going to spend life with. You first got to get the first principle right, and in the Bible it says, don't be unequally yoked. So let's get that right first. And then when it comes to husbands, husbands are supposed to dwell with their wives with knowledge. You're supposed to study your wife. They're supposed to study their wives. Husbands dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto a weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. And that's 1 Peter 3:7. I'm talking to the men on that one. That's a specific commandment, a specific guideline that God has lined out in the Bible for men. Now, as far as women, it says, "Likewise, ye wives, be subjection to your own husbands." Be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives, while they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear. So there are specific principles laid out in the Bible. I'm just only giving you examples of two, but there's other principles when it comes to men and women and how you're supposed to deal with each other in a marriage. And if you do that and both of you are humble and come together before God and submit to God and submit to each other. Some of the problems you wouldn't even have. So that's just an example there.
Okay. Please tell our listeners about your children's book, My Baby Sister. Was that your first attempt at a children's book?
No, that wasn't my first attempt at that was the first published children's book. Basically, on the My Baby Sister, a lot of the books that I write, I have some experience, meaning that some kind of way I have experience in it, or it affected me, or a close loved one, or whatever. But My Baby Sister is really about my two girls when they were growing up. I remember my oldest daughter. She was the only child for a long time because there's a major space in between my oldest child and my youngest child. And I remember my oldest one, she would always she said she wanted a sister or brother. Because she didn't have anybody to play with. So mommy wasn't a good playmate sometimes because I was always busy. So when she did get a baby sister, oh my God, she wanted to just give her back, because too much attention is going on this baby. So, it's really about a sibling rivalry and how kids learn how to appreciate each other, how she learned how to be a big sister to her little sister, and then it talks about the things that the little sister was doing, like the biting and the hitting and the getting away with stuff. So it really ministers to sibling rivalry and how kids can work through those seasons of life when it comes to sibling rivalry.
Okay. Now let's talk about your other book. Please tell our listeners about the Young Scholars Workbook. What's that all about, Brenda?
Okay, so the Young Scholars Workbook, and I'm going to tell you how that came about. I'm also a teacher, and so when I taught pre-K for a while, I basically took a lot of my lesson plans and different things that I taught from pre-K to fourth grade and just basically put some lessons together in the Young Scholars Workbook. Now, the Young Scholars Book Club is my own educational program. It's an online educational program where I also mentor and tutor pre-K to fourth grade. And in the book, it deals with all core subjects like math, reading, science, social studies, writing, all of those. So it's basically a workbook that parents can purchase for their kids, especially if they're pre-K to fourth grade, just to help them with, their academics in school.
Okay. Let's talk about you now, Brenda. Where were you born and raised, and where did you go to college?
Okay, so I was born in Dallas, Texas, but I was also reared in a small town called Wharton, Texas. So between Dallas and then later my mom moved back to her hometown, which is a small town in Wharton, Texas, and that's basically where I got my schooling, between Dallas and Wharton, Texas.
Okay. Now, what led you to become an author?
Okay. Basically, I was an author, didn't even know I was an author. I became an author at the age of 7 years old, and let me tell you how that panned out. My mother noticed that I loved to write. And so what she did, she had bought me a diary. They used to have these, I don't know if they still have them now, they may, but they used to have these diaries where it has a lock and key on the side.
Yeah.
You can write in it, then you can lock it up and, stuff like that. So she bought me one of those, and I would write in my diary and keep, notes and stuff. And then when I went to high school, then I started writing in journals. Then I learned about journals, so I started keeping a journal. And then from a journal in high school, then when I graduated and went to college, I was still writing in journals, but then it started becoming manuscripts. And then my manuscripts turned into published books. So it was a progression all the way from when I was 7 years old, a little girl, and over the years, I just honed my craft. I became, better at what I did, and I also love writing. I know that God has given me the gift of writing because it's something that I love to do. And also, I used to teach writing for fourth grade and elementary. So I was also a teacher where I also taught fourth graders writing so that they could pass their state test for the writing part and stuff. So that's pretty much how I started writing.
Okay. Brenda, whenever I interview an author, I always love to ask the standard question. Who were your favorite authors when you were growing up? And of those favorite authors, did any of them light the spark inside you to become a writer or perhaps influence your writing style?
Okay, so one of the authors that comes to mind would be Maya Angelou. I know a lot of people love Maya Angelou, but she just has such a unique writing style, and everybody loved the things that she wrote. So she was one of the ones that I would just read her writing, and I would always just look at what she did. So she was actually, I guess, an inspiration to me as an author.
Okay. Now, Brenda, please tell our listeners, where can readers find your books, and do you have a website?
Yes. You can order my book, or you can go to aswiftbooks.com, and I'm going to spell that out. It's spelled A as in Apple, S as in Sam, W as in Wallace, I as in Igloo, F as in Frank, T as in Tom, and then another T as in Tom, and then books, BOOKS.com. Aswift Books is where you can purchase all of my books. You can also go to Amazon. You can go to Barnes & Noble. Any of the online retailers would have my book available to order.
Brenda, what is your next book project, and when can we expect its release?
Okay, so I do have two books that I'm currently working on, trying to get them completed and finished. The first book that I'm working on is called Aswift Bible Coloring Book. So it's basically a book for kids. It has Bible characters that they can color, so they can learn about the Bible, and then also it has puzzles that they can do. Different puzzle clues that they can read, and then solve the crossword puzzles for the Bible figures that they learn about. That's the first book that I'm trying to get out as well. The next one is called Life Lessons Young Adults Should Learn Quickly. Now, I previously published a book called Life Lessons Kids Should Learn Quickly. That was the first book because it's really a three-set series. So I'm going ahead to do Life Lessons Young Adults Should Learn Quickly first because I feel like there's a need right now for young adults and the things that they need to learn so that they can be successful in life, and that way they don't have to fall in so many pitfalls and they can avoid some of those things. So those are the two books that I'm working on now, Aswift Bible Coloring Book, and then the other one is Life Lessons Young Adults Should Learn Quickly.
Brenda, are your books conventionally published or are they self-published?
No, I do self-publishing of my own books. I did try to do the conventional way, and I did have my very first book. I did have someone to publish it for me. I didn't do the self-publishing, but I started self-publishing because when I was getting ready to publish my second book, which was the Young Scholars Workbook, the first volume, they did not want to put in the pictures. Like when you're doing lesson plans or any kind of activities for pre-K, you got to have pictures. I mean, that's mandatory. You can't just put words in there for pre-K. So they didn't want to do all of the pictures and stuff that I had, the illustrations and stuff like that. So I said, you know what? I'm going to have to do this myself because they don't get it. You cannot do activities for pre-K without pictures.
Yep.
So that's how I got into self-publishing because, I mean, they just were refusing to do all the work as far as the pictures were concerned. Okay. And I had already paid them and everything, and I just didn't understand why you just can't do this. So that's how I started my own publishing company because they did not want to be bothered with all of the pictures that needed to go into the workbook for the pre-K students.
Understood. And you control your own product, which is great. I self-publish too, Brenda. 4 of my 5 books are self-published.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Brenda, I want to thank you so much for appearing on the show, and I wish you the best of luck on your future literary endeavors.
Okay. I appreciate it, and thank you, and have a good night.
You too. May God bless and keep you always.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for my next show, which will take place 2 weeks from now, where I will be interviewing author Susan Katz. And also, I'd just like to let my listeners know that my 5th book, Patriarchs of the Dugout, Baseball's Greatest Managers, is out on Amazon. And the only place you can get it is at Amazon. Just type in my name, Matthew DiBiase, MattheW DiBiase, and you'll see Patriarchs of the Dugout, Baseball's Greatest Managers. It's on sale at 25% off, so go out and get it. Thank you and good night.